Yeah, long time no see. Back again. It's your boy, Jordan Taylor, BDJ, Jordan BDJ Taylor, whatever you want to call it. As long as you know my name when you call me something, I'm appreciated. But look, we're back with another great conversation with the Working Title Podcast after work. I'm honored to be joined by a very, very special guest today. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Let the people know.
What's going on, everybody? This is
You got
Aaron
to
Maybin.
mic.
Huh?
You got
Oh, snap. My bad. What's going on, everybody? This is Aaron Maybin.
So he didn't really get much into it. So I give him the corny, over the top introduction.
It don't have to be over the top.
We got a community
Keep it easy.
activist, a man that shows up every day for his community, and we're gonna get into where we are actually recording this interview from. We got community activists, we got an author, we got an artist, been doing art for over 20 plus, 30 plus years.
Yeah, about 30 years.
He came out the womb with a paintbrush, y'all. We talking about a man, and on top of all these other things, he may be the most well known to the masses abroad for his time spent in the National Football League. So I'm excited to talk to somebody with such a varied background at such a young age too, because you don't really see somebody go through as many career paths, transitions.
Definitely done checked a lot of boxes in a short amount of time. Yeah,
exactly.
So coming up on 35 this year, but it's been a long journey, but I'm happy to finally be in this position that I'm in right now, as you spoke about before, between the community and all of the different pots that I have my hat in, as an artist, author, father, all of these other things. I feel like I'm in the position I'm supposed to be in. I feel like the work that I'm doing now is really indicative of work that we want to see, in communities like ours all across the country. So, I'm trying my best to use this platform and the resources that I have to bear to, create the type of future and the type of community that, we've talked about wanting since we was kids, you know.
That's beautiful. And that also, it just speaks to the power and the idea of, if you don't like the shit going on around you and you don't like the things going on around you, it's up to you to take whatever step you can do to change those conditions around you.
Yeah, it's ultimately, there's nobody coming to save us, and I'm always the person to say who better to save us than us. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, especially with this generation now, I hate even being at the point that we like saying stuff like that, this generation, they only want to do this, that, and the third. But, I think that, social media was something that didn't exist when we were younger, and we've watched it blossom and grow into this huge resource that we now have as this integral part of our lives, right? But one thing that social media has done that I think has worked to our detriment is sometimes we'll think that if we're just tweeting about something, or we're just posting about something on IG or TikTok, that we've done our due diligence and we've done our service, in creating a better world. And it's like, nah, like, after you get done tweeting about it, you have to be willing to put that work in. You have to be willing to actually roll up your own sleeves and get your hands dirty coming up with solutions.
That's real. I took a class in college called digital media and
Matter of fact, wait up for 1 second. Zyron, go ahead and put your jacket out on. You can go outside for a little bit while we finish doing this. All right?
Thank you, Zyron, for kicking it with us for a second.
That's my little man right there.
So, just for a little bit of backstory, because we was about to get into a whole bag, but I do want to put this front and center. Where are we recording this podcast at?
Yeah, so right now we're located at my rec center. Myself, my partner Tori Smith, Baltimore Rec and Parks. We've all,
I think I heard of that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Two former NFL players. We came together a couple years ago, with the idea to do something special here in West Baltimore. And now, after a lot of hard work, you're sitting in our rec center, and in this center we do after school programming, we do camps, we do classes, we have a community library here, we have after school activities, we got the courts and the field out there. And recently we just announced a huge partnership with the Baltimore Ravens and the Boys and Girls Club of America. And they're going to be doing a $20 million expansion of this facility to encompass a state-of-the-art football stadium, outdoor as well as indoor courts. And in addition to all of that, we'll have our recording studio, our green screen studio for podcasting and things like this, so the kids could actually have their hands on not just the equipment and materials, but learn how to create these types of content and media themselves.
No doubt.
And in addition to that, we'll also continue to have our community library and the art rooms and the classrooms. So, we're just doing some amazing things here in West Baltimore, bringing some resources that the community can definitely use, and just trying to, be a part of creating the solutions that we talk about needing all the time.
No doubt. No doubt. And all that is beautiful work.
Hi, Chloe. Y'all can go outside for a little bit while we finish up this interview. It won't be long.
Yo, you sound like such a parent just now. You can go outside for a little bit.
That's kind of the role that we've, fallen into. We look at all of our children here as extensions of our own. You know what I mean? And I'm definitely, my greatest job before any of this is a father to my own children. But because of how seriously I take that that position, I definitely also value and don't take for granted my position as a mentor and an educator. So with all of our kids, we want to make sure that they know that they're loved, they're cared for, they're appreciated, and all of this work ultimately is for them. This isn't stuff that we doing so that we can pat ourselves on the back. These are resources that we needed when we were that age. I grew up in this community. The first school I went to was right around the corner. So at the end of the day, this is what legacy looks like. This is what creating the solutions that you needed in your younger years looks like.
No doubt. So to circle back, and it fits so perfectly, to circle back to the previous point, when I was in school, I took a class called Digital Media and Democracy. And it talked about the concept you're talking about of, they called it slacktivism or clicktivism. It was one of those things. It's been a long time since I've been in college, folks. But it was the idea of what you're saying, that you think liking a Facebook post or tweeting something or changing your profile picture counts as activism, when it really is what you're speaking to, making real tangible change and real tangible change in community. And that's not to belittle that stuff either,
true. Because that's also a big component. The first book that I read, that I had written, was a book called Art Activism, where I actually defined what this whole process of creating work for this purpose meant and what went into it. But at the end of the day, that's just one component that without the grassroots work, without the community engagement, without the sustained political engagement, you don't see it work. You know what I mean? You need all of those things happening in tandem with one another in order for us to get the changes that we're saying that we need so bad.
So if someone is, let's say, on the borderline of where their political activation is that slacktivism, clicktivism that we're talking about, what advice would you have to them towards making tangible change? Because again, both roles are important.
Absolutely. But just pushing it forward. If you're tweeting about an issue, what else are you doing in real life to address it? So if you're talking about the schools, are you working with any schools? Right. Are you volunteering at any schools? Are you donating time, resources, opportunities to any schools? If you are if you're just a regular person, a student, something like that, are you volunteering? Are you showing up to community meetings? Do you know who your city council member is? Do you know who your state senator is? Do you know who the people that shape the legislative policy of your life are? And do you have relationships with these people? These things that you want to see happen in your neighborhood, have you voiced that to your council person? Have you voiced that to the people at your church? Are you organizing with any of these folks? You know what I mean? Like, I think that rather than just stopping with the tweet or rather than stopping with the post, let's further it. Let's see what communal organizations exist that are helping to work towards the achievements that we say that we need still. So are you involved with Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle? Are you involved with Baltimore Ceasefire Movement? Are you involved with the Baltimore Community Mediation Center? Are you involved with We Are Us Baltimore, Safe Streets, like Baltimore B360? I could keep on throwing names out there to you because the people that are creating the changes that we need already exist. All the solutions that our community needs already exist, but they need our support, they need our help, they need our volunteer hours, they need our funding, they need our connections, they need our networks, and how accessible are we making ourselves to the people that are changing our communities for the better? If we're not doing that, we can only complain so much.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the people, even the people that we elect to these positions of power, we're supposed to be the ones that also hold them accountable.
Right.
So that's our duty as constituents. That's our duty as Baltimoreans. That's our duty as black people in the hood trying to do better. Like, you know what I mean? It's our responsibility to be involved with that process, politically, socially, educationally, and in community.
That's real. That's real, and it also speaks to the previous idea that you said no one's coming to save us.
Exactly.
And I think that's been made abundantly clear. If it wasn't clear before 2020 and all the events that we saw take place there, it's abundantly clear now.
Absolutely, and we shouldn't need that drastic of a reminder.
Facts.
When has benevolence, you know what I mean, saved us or served us as a whole? You know what I mean? And that our dependence on that benevolence keeps us in a position of asking. You know, I tell people all the time, like, if I'm driving down the road right now and my car breaks down, right, and I pull over to the side of the road and I start calling people, hey, man, come get me. Hey, man, come get me. Hey, my car's broke down. You got to jump. Yeah. I might be in that car for an hour calling people, just trying to find somebody to lend aid. But I promise you, if I get out of that car and start pushing,
somebody gonna pull over.
I promise you, when they see me being a part of my own rescue, somebody's gonna pull over and help. And that's what we need to do as a community. We understand that our elected officials have a role. You know what I mean? Our pastors have a role. You know, our community change agents have a role, but so do the regular, you know what I mean, folk, the students, the 9-to-5 workers, the parents. You know what I mean? Just the regular constituents that are impacted by policy, are impacted by systemic factors, are impacted by economics. You know, we need to be organized in how we're going about addressing these things. No. The one thing that all of our predecessors did that we're missing the ball on is they were organized. And at this point, we have, by nature of technology, we have the ability to reach and touch and communicate with people on the other side of the world. Like, it's right at our fingertips, but we're not utilizing it effectively. You know, essentially, like, with this big connecting force that allows us to be more connected, we actually got more disconnected, and we actually got more self-absorbed, and we actually got more selfish than communally conscious. And I think that, you know, we can change that, but in order for you to change that, you need examples of what that looks like. You know, so I'm just trying to do less talking and more action. You know, when you look at me and you look at how I move and how I organize and how I operate, I try to implement those things in my life so that other folks can use it as a blueprint for how they want to get their certain things done.
No doubt. How important is it to model the shit you want to see on a grand scale, on a small level?
I think that's the most important thing. You know what I mean? I've always been a person that, you know, don't tell me, show me. You know what I mean? If you talk about living a type of life, I should be able to look at your receipts and tell that.
No doubt.
I should be able, if you tell me, if you've been planting seeds, I should be able to look at the fruit that those seeds have borne and be able to say, all right, yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I think that we're living in a time right now where so many negative aspects of our culture and community are actually platformed that it serves towards our demise. So if you want to change that, you actually have to change it not through words, but through action. You know what I mean? People will forget what you say, but they won't forget what you showed them. They won't forget how you made them feel. And I'm trying to, not just me, but me and a whole bunch of other brothers that have realized like the error in the ways of like our past generations, we're just trying to make it cool, make it popular, just to be a stand-up dude again. You know what I mean? How do we define real? How do we define a stand-up man? How do we define, you know what I mean, a real man? How do we define, you know, our community? I think that, you know, so many of our generations of our predecessors and ancestors have fought for the ability to self-define, but now it's almost like we have it and we don't even use it. You know what I mean? Or the definition of ourselves that we allow society to put on us or we allow other people to portray is the lowest version of who we are.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and the most commodifiable.
Right. So when you look at me, you should be able to look at how I'm raising my children. You know what I mean? You should be able to look at how I'm honoring my partner. You should look at how I'm building within my community, and you should see honor in that. You know what I mean? You should see respect in that. You should see all of the pillars that we want to build around in my actions. So if I'm talking it and I'm not also doing those things, then yeah, the words might help somebody, but it's not really going to take you nowhere. So what we're trying to do here at this rec center, what I'm trying to do with all of the projects that I put out, is just trying to show an example and model an example of what that looks like, what that kind of brand of masculinity and community engagement and networking and collaboration should really look like, so that other people can see the things that we accomplish and say, hey, if I can get together with a few of my boys over here, or if I can get together with some of the people in my network who look at the world through the same lens that I do, then we can do the exact same thing. There's nothing special about what we're doing. We're just being consistent.
How are you now different than you were at age 17? There's a whole lot of political activation going on. We clearly see that, and we also had, again, a whole life after that where you reached some high highs. I'm sure you reached some lows. I know you had some personal things. So why 17-year-old you? What is his mindset, and how is it similar and or different than, you said 34, about to be 35,
yeah,
right?
17-year-old me just wanted to go out and take over the world. Young, ambitious, lacked patience. You know what I mean? I think that so many of us in our teens, we got all this fight in us that we don't know what to do with. And as you get older, you start to understand how to channel that aggression or that anger or that any emotion, really, because and that's the thing. At 17, the only one of my emotions I probably could readily identify was anger. You know what I mean? Or, betrayal or any of those things. But now, 34, 35-year-old me, center of my life is love. You know what I mean? The center of my life is honor, loyalty, respect, community, family. Those things are the anchor that centers my life, and those things were always present, but you have a different focus when you're younger. You're focusing on the money, you're focusing on fame, you're focusing on popularity, you're focusing on, who loves me and why. Yeah. You know what I mean? But ultimately, what do you love? What do you care about? What do you value? You know what I mean? When you close your eyes for that final time, what will be said about you outside of, the things that you did? What did you sow into people's lives outside of that? And right now, that's the space that I'm living in. I'm living in the space of living the type of life that my sons and daughters and mentees and people that follow behind me can use that life and the things that I do as an example of how to achieve some of the things that they want, because I have been blessed to achieve a great many things, from humble beginnings, and I think that all of that is a testament to the village that raised me. It's a testament to the family that nurtured me. It's a testament to hard work and consistency. And sometimes that's all that people need to be able to see to be inspired. Understanding that if you go out and you work hard every single day and you nurture your relationships with people and you find folks that have been successful and you get up under them and you learn, you know what I mean?
And you listening to this, make sure you run that back, write that down, and follow that out.
Anything that you're trying to do in life, there's been people that have either done it or gotten pretty close.
No doubt.
So rather than you busting your head on a glass ceiling over and over again, how about you get up underneath those people, sit at their feet and learn? You know what I mean? And I was blessed to have a lot of amazing teachers. I still have a lot of amazing teachers that allow me to continue to grow and develop to this day. And, I'm constantly looking to learn more. I'm constantly challenging myself to continue growing and to continue equipping myself with more knowledge and information so that I can pass on the best version of my life lessons to the kids and the community that I'm a steward of.
Damn. That was beautiful. That's some beautiful shit you just said, bro. I want to ask you this. So we spoke to the rec center. We spoke to kind of your evolution as a man. And the reason the last question was the reason I asked it was because speaking on the masculinity point and seeing the evolution, I would assume, of being man, what's it called? Not all. What's the all college joint?
You said what?
All college. What's the?
All college, all American.
All American.
Yeah.
There we go.
All American.
Sitting next to sitting under Brother Malcolm. I just couldn't get the American KK out my head. But so going from there to going to the man you are today, and then you're doing art installations, you're writing books, you're doing things that aren't. I know, okay, I'm going to say it's not typical of an athlete, but they are now. But you were in the generation of kind of first breaking that barrier.
I was one of the early ones to the party, yeah.
Bro, even to the point where we talking 2 or 3 years ago, they questioning, I think it was Justin Herbert when he was coming out. They're like, well, does he really care about football that much if he has interest in other things? So what I want to know from you is how have you and how are you still nurturing all of these different pots that you're feeding into? You are an author, you are an activist, you are showing up here at the community center, you are an NFL alum, Penn State alum, a proud Penn State alum, might I add. I know that.
Absolutely.
That so how do you balance all these different things and all these ambitions, man?
By embracing not just my masculinity, but my humanity in its fullness. And I think that when we're young men, we make that mistake, right? We allow people to tell us that a man is only one thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the only emotion you become comfortable displaying is anger.
Right.
You know what I mean? The only time you feel comfortable feeling is when you're feeling one of the things that people have told you it's okay for you to feel. And whenever you feel or display outwardly other behaviors or other emotions, people tell you that there's something wrong with that. As I got older, I started to realize how wrong that way of thinking was. And unfortunately, it took me becoming a father to get to that point where I understood that if I am shaping and cultivating young minds and I want them to be fully functioning whole human beings, then I can't hand down my deficiencies to them by way of not knowing myself in its fullness.
Sheesh.
So I need to be able to feel the full spectrum of things. I need to be able to process the full spectrum of things and figure out why I feel those things. You know what I mean?
100%.
Why does society put those things on you? Why are you told by others that it's not okay for you to say this or for you to do that? Like, for you to start looking at life critically and understanding, for me to be my fullest self, I have to learn not just how to feel, but how to heal. And nobody ever teaches black boys that.
That's strong.
You know what I mean? Nobody ever teaches you how to process your trauma or how to overcome the areas in life in which you're broken. But society also loves breaking us, and they love watching us, self-destruct, you know what I'm saying, by way of media and so many other different forms of consumption. So understanding that basically the brand of manhood and realness that I was spoon-fed as a kid was toxic. You know what I'm saying? And trying to reshape that into something that's truly reflective of the type of world and the type of society and the type of household that I want to live in. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be everybody else's couple goals because you look like you the shit. I want to be in a loving relationship with a partner that's actually happy and fulfilled and content. You know what I mean? I don't want to live in a household where I'm a dictator. I want there to be true equality between me and my partner, and I want my kids to feel the freedom to be and express themselves however they feel as though they need to, within reason. I need my children to know order, but I also need them to know love, and I need them to know fun, enjoyment. You know what I mean? Like, I need them to experience all of the things that every other child gets to experience without the burden of saying, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Talking some revolutionary shit.
That is.
It is.
That is. And that's always been, I think, with all of the heroes that we look up to, most of them at least, especially these two right here, most people don't realize how close they were in ideology towards the end of their lives. You know what I mean? That they might have started off on polar opposite ends of the spectrum, but as they grew and as they learned more and as they experienced more in life, they actually worked much closer in terms of ideology than they were in the beginning. And that, in my mind, is a true example of what we need to be pushing towards. And I think that's something that we have to do. We have to do that self-work ourselves, right? Because these ideas and these ways of living and raising children and having relationships are so threatening to the established order of things that you never see them talked about when talking about our history. But that's always been us. You know what I mean? Like, at our best, our households were more of an egalitarian type of situation, because in the aftermath of emancipation, black women were out here working. You know what I mean? It might have been as maids, it might have been as washing clothes and preparing meals and things like that. But it was never just black men going out and bringing home the bacon like that. That's white folks' story.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if we're going to talk about our progress, then we have to differentiate between what's good for white America and what's best for us.
That's real.
And I think in order for us to figure out what's best for us, we got to go back home. We have to not literally traveling back to Africa and living there, but we have to truly go throughout that process of Sankofa when we look at what are the African-based practices that have always kept us alive. You know what I mean? And achieving and loving each other and building community for generations. And that love ethic has been consistent. The question is, how do we practice that love ethic correctly in today's society? You know what I mean?
100%.
In the hoods in which we live now, where everybody is disenfranchised. In the aftermath of, the crack epidemic, the opioid epidemic, the deindustrialization of the communities that we once had some type of organizing base and power base from. You know what I mean? All of these things can't be attacked until we deconstruct the ethic that's behind it. And that ethic can't be based on economics. It can't be based on this gender war. It can't be based on any of these things. Like, politics should never divide us. Gender should never divide us. Economics should never divide us. Partisanship should never divide us. Gang affiliation should never divide us. All of the things that divide us against each other are lines that aren't real.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're separated from each other in lines that don't exist. Living in neighborhoods right next to one another, but because you live on that side and I live on this side, we supposed to look at each other as enemies, as you know what I mean?
When the real power wins power building.
That's my brother. Like, until we can start adopting that love ethic in a real way, where as mad as I might be at you over whatever, I still have to see my brother when I look at you.
Right.
I still have to see my family. I still have to see my friend. I still have to see my collaborator. And then from that point, we can go along disagreeing forever, but there has to be a code that binds us outside the realm of white supremacy.
Yeah, outside them trauma bonds that are enforced.
We have to move past this point where the only place that we can bond is around our pain. You know what I mean? Like
write that one down too.
I don't want that anymore. You know what I mean? I don't like. The only time that we come together can't be after tragedy. It can't be after one of us is killed. It can't be after, you know what I mean? After the bomb drops, after the war starts, before all of that happens. Before all of that happens, we got to remember that there was joy all throughout there. Even in my studies, when I go back and you look at the time of chattel enslavement, right? Even when you go to these slave plantations, if you go and visit Monticello, if you go and visit some of these historic sites of oppression, of terrorism, of state-sanctioned violence against black bodies, you still will see all the evidence to show that we loved. You know what I mean? We experienced community there. We made community there in the most hellish of circumstances. So there's never been a time where we didn't take the pain that the world gave us and make something beautiful out of it. We gave the world the blues. We gave the world rock and roll. You know what I mean? We gave the world the Negro spirituals that bring you together no matter what race, color, or creed you are. So at the end of the day, that's the real ethos that makes us who we are. Our ability to endure pain is just an element of that strength. But the real meat and potatoes of that is the love. You know what I mean?
100%.
And that's something that regardless whether you talk about our art, whether you talk about our food, whether you talk about our community, if you don't see the love, it's because you're not looking for it. You know what I mean? But if you're really paying attention, everything we do in some way, shape, or form is shaped by that. The problem is we've always loved each other hard because we've always been loved on hard.
Right, because we
You know
thought
what
that
I
was the
mean?
only way.
But love shouldn't have to hurt. It does sometimes. But like you said, we can't just be bonding around our pain. There has to be something deeper than that. And there is no ethos that runs deeper than love, in my opinion.
That's real. That's real. The point on turning pain into beauty too. That's something that I've seen you do literally through your art. Like literally, this is what I went through. This is how I plan to transform it into something that's more palatable. But also on top of that, is you build a whole industry around it too, which is very dope. It's a very good example for young people that are trying to understand, how do I have something I'm passionate about, a hustle and love, and then how do I create an industry around it?
That's what hustling has always been.
No doubt.
We've just been taught to look at it through the wrong lens.
Right.
The hustle I'm doing is nothing different than the hustle that dudes on the street is doing. You just have to use your critical thinking skills to establish, all right, there's always going to be a market for illegal merchandise because it's illegal. But what legal do I have to offer the world that there's a market for? And if there isn't a market, if there's a need, I can create one. You know what I mean? Like, and at the end of the day, if you focus on that, if you focus on where there's a need and how we can be creative about creating solutions for that, like when I looked around and I saw years back, we're talking around 2015, before I wrote my first book, and I'm talking about the type of work that I do. I'm talking about the type of art that I make, and I'm looking around for a book or a curriculum or something like that defines it, and it doesn't exist. I'm seeing everything taking you to protest art, but that's not what I make. But all right, if this definition doesn't exist, it was because I was supposed to make it. You know what I mean? If this book doesn't exist, it was because I'm the one that was supposed to write it.
Yeah.
So I took the time and really did proper research and used made sure that I used all of the types of art of mine that I wanted to be a representation for this new genre, because the genre isn't new, but the definition of it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now there are colleges that are teaching, you know what I mean, this course. There are elementary, middle, and high schools that are now teaching around this material that I've created, you know?
Sheesh.
And now based off of that, now you create the curriculum. And after you create the curriculum, now you create the institution where the curriculum gets taught. You know what I mean?
100%.
But at the end of the day, you keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is the world needs this. It doesn't exist, so we got to create it. You can look around the city and talk about all the rec centers that have closed up. We can talk about that all day. But what are we doing to open them? What are we doing to create them? We can talk about what the school system isn't doing, how they're not educating our kids. Are we starting our own community libraries? You know what I mean? Are we offering tutoring to our kids and all of this kind? When we stop this interview, I'm about to go help them with their homework. Are we doing that on a day-to-day basis with the kids in our village? You know, and that's the thing, you know, our children will be whatever their village, you know what I mean, creates of them. So it's our job as a village to make sure that we have those things that are available to nurture them, to educate them, to make sure that they're fulfilled, to make sure that they're loved, to make sure that they have access of seeing beyond their present circumstances. So when we have camp, we take them out to DC, you know what I mean? We take them out to colleges, you know, we take them, you know, because we want them to see outside of these invisible lines that box us in, that aren't real. And we want them to see what's possible outside of that. Not so we can run away, but so that we can
Grow up, achieve a certain amount of wealth, resources, knowledge, and opportunity, and bring it right back
to the hood where it needs to be so it can become what educates and nurtures the next generation.
How you feeling time-wise?
Oh, I'm good.
Whatever questions you have.
Hey, man, listen.
Long as they don't disturb you while they sitting there working, it's fine. But I think that's cool that they around anyway. You know
I promise all that's staying there, from the basketballs bouncing to the kids in the background laughing.
Because that's important. It's like, because once we have the expanded facility, they going to be doing their own podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I let them watch me do mine. I let them watch me do interviews. I let them, see when even a couple of my books right now, we're doing the audio book version of it. So I let a couple of them sit on with me when I'm recording. So they understand that process. Yeah. Because pretty soon, they're going to be writing their own books. Uh-huh. And I want them to know this whole process from creation to production to, all right, now we're selling it.
No doubt.
You know what I'm saying? When I was a kid, I didn't know that it was possible for a black man to be an artist until I met my mentor, Larry Poncho Brown. Black man that lived life on his own terms, that did what he wanted. You know what I mean? That used his art to travel all over the world, that, his stuff was on the Cosby Show and in Living Color and all of these places. But besides all of that, the fact that he did what he wanted, that he didn't have a boss, that he didn't have anybody that told him, you got to do this, you got to do that. He did what he wanted, and he used his artistic talent to make that happen. Until I met him, I didn't know that was possible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We're not taught that.
So until a lot of these kids get exposed to some of the things we're showing them, they don't know it's possible.
Right.
That's why I bring in folks even outside of what I do. I bring in all of the folks that I look up to. Like, hey, come teach my kids how to do that. You know what I mean? Come holler at them about that. Because at the end of the day, we're expanding horizons and we're showing them that they have access to something bigger.
Facts.
You know what I mean? All of these boundaries and barriers that we think box us in aren't real. You know what I mean?
Man.
The spirit behind them, you know what I mean? The systematic nature of their existence is very real, but the fact that it hinders us from anything is not real. You know what I mean? I wanted to bring every resource into this building that was necessary for someone their age, you know what I'm saying, to be fully functioning human beings. You know what I'm saying? So every book that you need to read, it's in here. And if it comes out, we get it. You know what I'm saying? Every course that you could study in school, we got the textbooks in here. We got the computer lab in there if you need access to the internet. We got our own library in here for you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Any piece of art equipment that you need is in here. So whatever you need, we got the tools and the resources. All you need to come with is the creative mind and the consistency of showing up every day.
Yeah.
But that's a fair trade.
No doubt.
You know what I'm saying? Every kid, we're operating off of the premise that every kid deserves access to education, recreation, food, technology, love, understanding, commitment, and those are the pillars that we built this institution around. So, with all of those things, we don't want any of this work to stop with us. We want it to be passed down, and we're passing it down every single day to this next generation of kids coming up underneath us. And hopefully the culture that we create, is something that gets maintained and replicated, not just throughout the city, but throughout all of the places that black people dwell.
That's the one. That culture piece. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with Nika Namdi, Fight Black Baltimore?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the quotes that she has that always stuck with me: the biggest impact of white supremacy that it does to us as Black Americans is to our imagination.
Oh yeah.
And so what you're doing is so
There's
powerful.
There's a very similar quote that Ibram X. Kendi has in his book where he says the only problem with black people is the fact that we think that there's a problem with black people.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that idea, ideology of, race doesn't exist. This concept of race is man-made. So when we think about it through that lens, if you could take something that's not real and make it so real to people that they create whole sciences around the idea that these type of human beings are inferior to this other group of human beings. That's how destructive an idea can be. But I'm focused on the asset-based conversation.
Right.
How constructive can an idea be when done from the space of love, when done in an organized fashion with like-minded individuals that aren't afraid of anybody? You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
The second we stop being afraid of ourselves and of what we think, the power that we think that our enemies have over us, second we become undefeatable.
Let's talk for a second about getting on code.
Absolutely.
So, if you're not aware, getting on code is Mr. Maybin's most recent.
The most recent offering, you know, is something that it's a project that I'm very proud of, and I think that right now, especially with this conversation that we're having right now, is very necessary.
So, if someone doesn't know anything about you, doesn't know anything about your work, doesn't know anything about your book, what would be your sales pitch? I want you to look at the camera. I want you to look at the prospective buyer out there that's like, I just want to make change in my community, but I can't figure it out. I want you to give them a pitch.
There needs to be a code, a communal code that we operate with as black people when dealing with one another. In our communities, in our households, in our schools, in our churches, in all of the places in which we live, dwell, and organize together. That code won't necessarily be the same for everybody in every community. But what I've done is through my years of work, looked at society and picked out the key areas that I feel as though we as a community are out of code with one another. And each chapter centers around how I work and organize in that way. In spite of that, the code that I utilize when doing the work that I do, and what most importantly, after each chapter, there are a series of discussion questions that lead to a communal or a household conversation around each topic, so that you're not just taking in my ideas of how I organize and how I build, but I'm basically a starting point for you to have a conversation with the people in your household,
right,
or in your school, in your church, your team, whatever it may be, about what is going to be your communal code in dealing with one another, what's going to be your familial code when dealing with one another. And we're talking about everything from, cancel culture to, the toxicity between, our men and our women to, group economics, how we build our school system, how we rebuild our school system from the inside out, how we rebuild our communities from the inside out, intercommunal violence, or as most people would say, black on black violence, and how we go about addressing that. All of the areas that I feel we can't move forward without addressing have a chapter in the book. It's not a long read. It's about 20 chapters, but the chapters are short, and the questions themselves are poignant, but they are meant to start a conversation that will really get us somewhere. I think that every time when I see these discussions happening in society, whether it be online or otherwise, the conversation is built around the toxic element. You know what I mean?
Deficit-based versus asset-based.
Exactly. We're talking about the problems, not the solutions. So my whole thing is, how do we have these conversations, but have it in a way where love is the center of the entire conversation, where what's best for black people as a whole is the center of the conversation. And what does it look like to model that conversation for society and to get that started? If people can go into their households and get their households on the same code, you know what I mean? Yeah. Now my household can link with your household. And now our household can link with this household over here. And now we actually have a power base that we can work from. We have, even if we're talking from the group economics perspective, if we're practicing in-home banking in my house, right? And you're practicing in-home banking at your house, what does it look like for us to make an investment group together where everybody that we have banking together is making some type of seed offering into a pot that we can now utilize to start a business, to say it again?
Like a susu.
Absolutely. We hear these things talked about, but I try to be very practical in how I break them down and make it palatable, because a lot of these projects that discuss either the problems or potential solutions, those books are written for academia. They're written for rich, educated white spaces that where basically they're looking for white man's approval on how we can organize. This ain't that. This is an in-house discussion. You know what I mean? And a lot
wait outside for a second.
And a lot of the principles in this book can be applied to other communities and other neighborhoods. But this is something that was written with us in mind, and not just the college-educated bourgeoisie, but the brothers and sisters on the corner, the single moms, the single fathers, the people that's still in the streets, the people that are behind bars. We have a whole program right now in the prison system reading these and having these conversations around their tears. So this was what this book was intended for. It was intended to get all of us on code with each other and to start the conversation about how we do that in an organized way.
You got any I guess follow-up events coming up around it, like getting on Code Live.
We have a whole tour going on right now. We just did stops in DC and Philly. Coming up next, we got Penn State. My alma mater. Right, yeah, I'll be doing an art show as well as a speaking tour up there around this project. But obviously that's more of that educated academia crowd. But what we've been doing is locally here in Baltimore and DC, Philadelphia, New York. We're about to do a couple stops up there. We've been doing this series of fireside chats similar to this one, where we actually dive into the subject matter of the book. And we actually start to model that discussion that is framed around each of those topics. So, you can definitely follow me on social media to see which cities we're going to be in next, and see which we would come out to and be involved in. But in addition to that, man, we're doing. I got some stuff that I'm getting ready to drop with a few local HBCUs here in Baltimore. I'm going to be doing some projects with Coppin, Morgan. Yeah, man, we got a lot of stuff happening around just that project specifically, but around all of the projects, man. I have a curriculum that I created around my art activism book and workbook that a lot of schools here in Baltimore have as a part of their curriculum at the student holding sites here. But we're also partnering with school districts all across the country in different areas that resemble Baltimore in their makeup. So I'm just really looking to make all of these things accessible to the people that are doing this work in similar communities, and making sure that as generations continue to move on, that we're making sure that we evolve this work to be what our society, but more specifically our communities, need in order to thrive. If we're ever going to close that wealth gap, if we're ever going to close the gap in life expectancy, or infant mortality, or any of these things, we got to get on code with each other first. And then once we're on code with each other, then we can make sure that we're properly lobbying politically, and we can make sure that these economic bases that we're creating ourselves through, grassroots, community-based investing, now we can utilize that capital to build. You know what I mean? If we're doing these things effectively in terms of reframing our educational system, our kids will actually be more developed and ready for the world as they're coming into it. So all of these things contribute, hopefully, to sustainability for our most vulnerable neighborhoods. And I just really want to be a part of helping to create whatever that blueprint looks like for us.
Sheesh. Listen, I can sit here and chop it up all day, but I got one last question for you. We're going to have to run back a part two if you willing.
Oh, yeah. Whenever you guys want.
But I'm going to ask you this. This is the last question. This might be the most important question I ask you all day. What does rest look like for you?
What is what?
Rest look like. R-E-S-T.
Not enough. But I'm trying my best not to be one of those black men that leans into how much I'm overworking myself. I'm really trying to get better. I'm trying my best to get better. Me and my lady have conversations several times a week about making sure I'm getting a certain amount of hours every night. I'm not going to say how many that is because it's not what it should be. But
more than 4 at least, right?
Say it again.
More than 4?
On a good day.
Sheesh.
But the work got to get done at some point.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I'm one of those guys where, I try to be present wherever I am. You know what I mean? So whenever I'm here, I try to be here. I try not to be, on the block where things are going crazy. I try not to be in, the halls of political office where we're also organizing. I'm I'm here, I'm here.
Gotcha.
And, you know, when I'm in community, I'm in community. But when I walk in the house, you know what I'm saying? Whatever was going on during the day, I got to drop that, you know, at the door on the way in, because, you know, once I approach my sanctuary, that space is specifically for my lady and for my children, you know. So I'm that father that, you know, all morning is with, you know, his kids, and then once he gets home at night, you know, I'm the one up late night with them, you know what I'm saying? And then once they go to sleep, once put them down, now if I'm writing, if I'm reading, if I'm studying, if I'm doing anything, you know, that time, you know, kind of bleeds into the evening. Oh, yeah. What I will say, though, is rest for me looks like me being in my place of peace, which is my home. Because even if I'm working, if I'm around my loved ones, you know what I mean, I'm at a place of peace and rest and happiness. So, you know, being able to spend more time at the house with my kids, with my lady, being able to spend more time prioritizing my mental health and emotional wellness, you know what I mean? Sitting with your therapist every now and again and really like just getting some stuff off. And even, you know, when it's not a therapist, finding you a village of, you know, some brothers and sisters with some gray hair that you can actually sit with that know life and can actually talk to you about all of these important things. It doesn't always have to be, you know, a therapist or a psychologist. You know, sometimes you just need a mother. Sometimes you just need a father. Sometimes you just need an elder. You know, sometimes you just need somebody that loves you, that's willing to listen and that's willing to pour into you and sow into you. You know, so me understanding who that village is and making sure that I honor them and give them their proper time so that they can teach me the things that they're supposed to teach me has been an important process. And I'd say also, even though this doesn't count as rest, like, you know, studying where we as Black people, because I'm not even just going to say Black men, because I know a lot of women that struggle with the same thing. You know, have you ever heard of John Henryism?
Have I? That's what made me ask you about rest. We talked about that at my job.
So, you know, this is something that I write pretty extensively about in my book. You know, we adopt this this ideology of grinding. You know, everybody that you talk to, especially dudes in the hood, is going to tell you how much they grind. But, you know, most of the time we don't acknowledge that we have that mentality because we grew up seeing other Black men with that mentality. And usually those guys were successful, right? But when you look at that long term, what was the long term impact of that grind on that man?
Nah, that's 61.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how many of our fathers, grandfathers, and elders have we seen drop dead early? You know what I'm saying? And never get a chance to enjoy life because they grinded themselves into the dirt. You know what I'm saying? I've been blessed enough to retire my father and my grandfather. You know what I mean? To build my father his dream house down in South Carolina and move my whole family down there. So, you know, I knew I was staying in the hood to build, but, you know, they did their time. You know what I'm saying? Like, they deserved to finally live, you know, in a place of peace. And my grandfather, God rest his soul, we lost him last year, but he was able to live out, you know, the last decade plus of his life in a house that his grandson built for him and his son. You know what I mean? He didn't die in no nursing home surrounded by a bunch of strangers. Like, he died in his son's house surrounded by loved ones. You know what I'm saying? Like, 2 days before he died, he was still chopping trees down, you know, but he actually was able to live in a fullness that most black men specifically never get to. You know what I mean? And when I think of his life, and I think of all that he had to sacrifice and do just for my family and myself to be here, you know, I think of the hope that I have for all Black men, that we can finally get to a place that we can enjoy the human elements of who we are, you know what I'm saying, before society turns us into a work mule to live our whole life, you know, providing for others, but to never experience joy, you know what I mean, or fulfillment, you know, or contentment. We act like as Black men that that word contentment is like a sin. It's a sin for us to ever get to a point where we're content. You know what I mean? Like how much is enough? You know, and even in my personal life, like, you know, I might have built my father's dream house, you know, the compound for the family to have down south, but still to this day I live in a row house in West Baltimore. I live in the middle of the hood, right over in Sandtown. But I'm happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have relationships with everybody in my community. They show us love. You know what I mean? So again, how much do you need to really be happy? And, you know, is what's more important to you in life? You know, money or relationships? You know what I'm saying? Because I think that if you value, you know, relationships, love, understanding, all of those things, you know, you can actually live a much fuller life than somebody that spends their entire life just chasing money.
Drops mic. Listen, this interview has been a banger. It's been one of my favorites. Like I said, we got to chop it up for a part 2. Aaron, let the people watching, listening, let them know how they can stay in contact with you, stay following you, how they can support you, your efforts, everything going on, and we'll wrap on that.
Yeah, so once again, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you for having me on. It's been a great conversation. Anybody that wants to keep up with what I'm doing, you can go on www.aaronmaybin.com. You can follow me on IG, Aaron Maybin. You can follow me on Twitter at Aaron M. Maybin, as in Aaron Michael Maybin. You can also follow or watch the videos up on YouTube on my channel on there that keeps you up to date with some of the stuff that we're doing concerning like the book tour, podcast, and certain other things. But yeah, man, I definitely appreciate the platform. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to having another one.
Likewise. Signing out, it's your boy BD. Hopefully this conversation sparked you to make some kind of change, whether it be big or small, to make the world around you a better place. Because as Aaron Maybin eloquently said, ain't nobody coming to save us. At Working Team Pod on all socials, like, rate, subscribe, review, tell a friend, DM us with somebody that we should interview. Just engage with us because we here for y'all and we here to build. Peace.
You do good?